I had heard about your dilemma, and I didn't know what to expect, and if you'd be real protective or something.
I recognized how much attachment I had to what people thought about me, and how much attachment I had to the way I thought I was going to fulfill my mission, which was through being loved or being liked or, being able to do this or that. And it's really just reflected back to me like, okay, like where are there still places where I'm not free? Like where are there still places where I'm not free? Like where are there still places where I'm not free? Like where are there still places where I'm not free? Like where are there still places?
How far will a man go to remain in service to his own ego? How will he hide it? How will he protect it? How will he use it to deceive and manipulate? How will he use it to suppress parts of himself that are desperately calling out for healing? What happens when the mask of the ego begins to crumble and fade? What responsibility does he have to the public at large? And what will he do when there is nowhere left to hide? Welcome back to Justice for All. I am Aaron Justice, this is Justice for All, and welcome to episode 2 of Keeping Up with the Marcuses. Here, we are going to be diving into the second video after the fallout of the major Aubrey Marcus podcast episode where all of the scandalous things began to unfold. If you'll remember, there was a first video follow-up, which I already did a reaction and a response to, so if you haven't seen that yet, feel free to go over and check that out. Here we're going to do this episode, and I wasn't even planning on doing this, or that first one in the overall idea of the series. This one I launched into because of what it is about specifically, and after watching it, I just could not leave it alone. And that's because when we open and look at what's going on here, first, I wanted to see out of curiosity which way he would pivot as a businessman, as a marketer, right? The ego came out in the first follow-up video and was leaning heavy on the victim card, typical first response of the wounded ego, right? Victim, try to play, get everyone on your side. And in order to do that, he swapped out his wife, Ilana, who proved to be too truthful in emotion to come back on an episode, and instead got the woman who has been by his side for 18 minus 4 years. And of course, she performed exactly as he wanted her to. The thing is, we didn't buy it. So I wanted to see where he was going to go. And where he went was of a particular interest to me because he invites someone that he knows, that's been on his podcast before, and is a doctor, back in to do a session of IFS. And of course, I'm talking about Dr. Richard Schwartz, a personal kind of hero of mine, a titan of psychotherapy. And so they go in, presumably, to do an IFS session. That's at least what the setup leads us to believe. So let's take a look at that setup. Of course, we have Aubrey pulling out the one doctor, Gaffney, who was mercilessly attacked after the Fallout episode. So instead, he takes out, just like Ilana, takes out the problem. He takes out one doctor, substitutes in another doctor that is very popular and is well liked. So that's the first thing. Second thing, the title, Life-Changing Therapy, Healing Parts and Revealing Entities. So here right off the bat, he's already laying down the groundwork to subtly and subconsciously prepare the minds of the audience that, hey, what I'm going through here is this life-changing therapeutic process. You guys have been calling for me to do work, so here it is. Here we go. And boy, are you in for it. Except that's not exactly what happens. More on that later. But he also talks about the healing of parts and the revealing of entities. The problem here is that, as we will soon see in what unfolds here, he doesn't take actual accountability. He doesn't bring up and address the issues that you and I have brought up in comments and in other YouTube videos. He very vaguely refers to, oh yeah, the audience was coming after, they're trying to cancel me in this time. So again, introducing little subtle victim card cues. Of course, Dr. Schwartz brings up, yeah, I knew about, your issues you were having, and I was kind of skeptical about Cummings. I didn't know if you would be guarded. And they're like, oh no, yeah, okay, well, let's do this. And it's kind of confusing the way they talk about it. Like, are they coming in to just talk about the therapy in regards to what's going on, or are they actually doing a therapeutic session? And again, we're going to get to that in just a moment. But the subtitle, Healing Parts, Revealing Entities. What ends up happening with this title right off the bat is that you think what he's going to be doing is healing these parts of himself and revealing what exactly entities. And what you will see later on is that by not coming in and vaguely mentioning that these things are happening, that people are making claims, and they're calling for action on certain things. By not making it clear exactly what the people were asking for, what they're stating, he gets to kind of eschew any responsibility or accountability at all. Because you can't take responsibility, and you can't account for things that you're not listing out. Just saying, yeah, people were mad at me, so I need to kind of focus, on some areas of mine. That says nothing. That does nothing. Especially when you go on, as we will see, to do things that have absolutely nothing to do with that podcast, what the people are talking about, what happened in your life that has got people so upset. It's a farce. Healing Parts, Revealing Entities. What he's doing here, by putting that in the title of what is to follow, is it's already signaling to you that we're healing his parts, and we're also revealing dark cosmic entities that have become attached to him during all of his psychonaut plant medicine journeys. And what he subtly sneaks in with this is that it wasn't me, Aubrey. It was this part over here, this confused and this emotional part. But here, we took care of it. It wasn't me, Aubrey. It was this dark entity that attached onto me when I was trying to heal in a medicine journey. And now, we're revealing and talking about what that could be. But it wasn't me, your friend, Aubrey. It was these things here that we're now taking care of. Okay, we'll see how it goes. So, of course, we start into the journey. And like I said, I'm not even really sure if they're actually getting into a part session or not, because the dynamic of it seems a bit confusing at the beginning. And it's hard to tell whether or not they're actually getting into the real of what unfolded and what happened. Fortunately, right off the bat, it's just more posturing. And as a practitioner of IFS, of course, I do have a keen eye on what's going on. And of course, it doesn't have to be done the way that I do it. I mean, he's here with the man himself, the founder, the guy who created and explored this. And so taking some kind of different route, a different, variation of the modality, would be interesting. But what began to unfold was something different entirely. In fact, I wouldn't even regard it as IFS or parts work. And so let me back up for a second. Once they go into it, I wasn't really sure what was getting ready to unfold, because they're kind of like talking about it back and forth, and then Dr. Schwartz just kind of suggests, as if he didn't already know or they didn't pre-plan, he suggests like, yeah, it would kind of be good for you, but I didn't know where you're going to be with things. And Aubrey's like, yeah, let's do it. Of course, it's why we're here. It's why this is set up, right? So they're like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And they just kind of launch into it. There's no preparation. There's no pre-game conversation about it. Okay, fine. But then they go into it, and the way they're doing it, it seems like they're doing a mock version of parts therapy or of IFS. It's very stilted. It's very clinical, but not good clinical. It's clinical in the sense that it doesn't seem real, right? What I mean by that is when I was in school learning his technique, we had to go through, of course, in our clinicals, we had to go through these mock setups in order to be tested and graded and scored by our practitioners. In order to do that, we weren't doing an actual authentic parts therapy session. It was a mock session where we already know the answers, we already know what's going to happen and transpire, but we just go down and, the practitioner has to hit their points and their comebacks and do, all of that. And that's fine. That's what's necessary for school, right? You can't go into an unpredictable thing and have a grading curve for a class on it. The point is, that's what this looked like. It looked like my clinicals in school when we were doing this. It didn't look anything like an actual IFS session that I have done or that I've done personally when I was doing the work as a client. It's disconnected from body and soul. There's no heart in it. Dr. Schwartz doesn't even seem connected and invested in what's going on between them. And after a couple of minutes, you kind of get the gist of what's going on here. And that's when everything falls apart. Because you see that there's only one part working, and that part was already working before the cameras even turned on. In fact, that part never stopped working. And that part is, of course, Mr. Marcus's wounded ego. When you watch this unfold, it was abundantly clear that we have a man whose wounded ego is playing puppet master and has written a script and is going along with the script that he's come up with in his head and wants to display to the public. His ego has formed an idea of how he can spin this around in his favor while not having any accountability, responsibility, while not getting into the actual dirt of the issue, while not bringing in any of the things that people have come against him with. No, we're going to be very vague about it, and I'm just going to try to weave and spin this narrative in this very interesting and very life-changing therapeutic modality with the man himself. To be honest, I'm a little surprised and disappointed that Dr. Schwartz agreed to this. I'm guessing maybe he needed the publicity or there was money involved. And it pains me to say that. And maybe I'm wrong. I hope that I am. But I don't think so. If you guys have watched it, go down in the comments and let me know what you thought about the unfolding. Because we're actually going to take a look at it right here. Because there's a point when I'm first watching it, and I'm watching this go back and forth, and this is what's going on in my mind. I'm watching this, I'm like, I see what's happening here. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to see that Dr. Schwartz is not even really connected and invested, and he's just kind of like going through the motions. They're not actually taking the time to go inward, to sink in. They're not playing with breath and adjusting levels of consciousness. They're not taking the time to get in and investigate the different parts and what may be going on and what's actually showing up. It's just, okay, yeah, get done with your part. See, okay, you found one, cool. What's he say? It's monotone, it's rote. It's not inspired, it's not heartfelt, it's not soul-driven. This isn't real shadow work. This isn't real soul-level work. This is just more performance. And it reminded me of when I first came across Aubrey and why I never was really a fan. And that's the first time that I saw his work was the In the Dark documentary that he did. And I thought, okay, I know about this. I've never done it myself. This guy made a little documentary. Let's see what it's about. And I was kind of excited to see how it played out, how it unfolded. And the entire time I was watching it, I felt, I guess the words the kids use today would be cringe or the ick. It was just like, you can just tell, right? It's the people that, they set up the cell phone and the lighting so that they can come around in the corner and have this huge crying meltdown. As if we don't see that this is a performance. And hey, if you're doing business and you're selling things and that's your shtick, no hate. Get that bag. Cool, fine. But this is different. This is a man who is selling himself in a position of leadership and healing, in a position of deep spiritual teaching, and he's making a lot of money off of you, me, by doing it. And I have a problem with that. And now he's here and he's making a mockery of what I do consider to be sacred, if that word even has any meaning anymore. I do consider this to be deeply personal, deeply spiritual, and honorably sacred work. And now to even think about it gives me that same feeling inside. I got it the other day. I was in with a client, and I had to take a moment for myself, get my own stuff together. But anyway, let's take a look at this, and tell me what you guys think down in the comments with this clip. We'll come back, and then we'll discuss what happens.
Yeah.
To be in this state of rage, like I can handle myself without you.
All right, so see how he reacts to that.
He agrees. He's like, you're right.
So
You're right.
is he more open to unloading the rage now?
It's almost like he's more open to just dissolving. There's some part of me that I suppose I could go into the rage and make a big
No, we don't need
thing of that, but
need
like
to-
he's willing to dissolve, actually.
Let's just be clear about that, because that's uncommon. The part would want to dissolve. But ask him similar question that I gave earlier. If we could unload the rage, but he was still left, he didn't dissolve, what might he like to do instead inside of you?
Just play basketball.
Great.
And he would still be a competitor, but
Yeah.
he would be happy
That's right.
competing.
Tell him that's where we're headed.
Okay. It's like, all right, man, you don't have to dissolve. Like you're not bad. You
That's
don't
right.
need to disappear.
That's right.
Like we can just transform the way that you go about doing this and give you places to play, like playgrounds to live and enjoy yourself.
Yeah. So
And he likes that, but he likes that a lot better than feeling like you had to
disappear.
and like go to the light like a ghost. Or
Yeah,
something.
parts don't like that.
Yeah.
So ask him where he carries the rage in his body, in or on his body.
He says in his jaw.
And does he want to experiment with that and see what it's like to not carry it?
Okay, so what you guys saw there, for those of you that may not be familiar with IFS or parts work at all, what we're talking about here essentially is that our psyche, it is one large overall mind, okay, right? Your psyche, it is a unified whole, but the psyche has different smaller parts. And so your personality overall is made up of these little smaller sub-personalities. An analogy that I use is the physical body, right? We have one body that we utilize, but the one unified body is made up of individual parts, right? My right index finger is not my left pinky toe, and my left hip is not my right earlobe, right? These are all individual parts that have their own specific purposes. They have their own specific parts that they play in the makeup of the functioning of our human body. And the psyche works in very much the same way. We have all of these different sub-personalities that come in, and they have different roles and different jobs and parts that they play, and even those sub-personalities can have sub-personalities of their own. Like, for example, a wounded ego is going to most likely have an inner critic, right? An inner critic is vast, has a major role in our lives. And so the inner critic can have, well, the happy tormentor over here, or the sly, charming, seductive person, part over here, whatever. And that's kind of like an overview of what we're looking at. And so what's transpiring up to the point of this scene is that Dr. Schwartz is rightly directing Aubrey to go within and find the part, his subpersonality, that had the great reaction to the backlash that he received from the public, from us, right? Who he's calling his tour mentors. The tormentors, the people that are tormenting him, making him feel the way that he feels, but with a good purpose. It's this whole, we won't even go there. So he's diving in. He's not taking the proper time to really go within and sink down and find this part and step into the thinking in the shoes of this part. He takes, the 2 or 3 seconds. Okay, I got him. They go back and forth, and it's very rote, it's very mechanical. And ultimately, it is kind of like an inner child or inner adolescent-ish of Aubrey, young, obviously. And the part, what it is feeling, what it is emoting, is rage. And they go into this conversation about rage, and Aubrey brings up Joe Rogan and samurais. That's what he does. But then something very interesting happens. Because see, up until this point, I'm not completely sold yet, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, is this real? Is this fake? Like, are they trying to do a mock session just to show people, like, this is what it looks like? Or are they actually, what they led in with was that they were going to do the work on him in session. That's what I thought was getting ready to happen. But then what I was seeing was this fake performative mock version. So at this point, when I'm first watching it, I still don't know exactly what they're trying to portray here until that scene. Because there's a tell in there that Aubrey didn't know well enough. His ego didn't plan for the script ahead of time, and so he didn't know. And he has to realize it and redirect right in the moment because Dr. Schwartz actually calls him on it, as he should. When this happened, I jumped up in my chair like a guy watching a basketball game, like, "Ref, did you see that, ref? Foul, foul." And I was going to be upset if he let him get by with it, and he didn't, so I was thankful for that. So he calls him on it in a respectful way. And he says, whoa, let's be clear on this. Because what Aubrey's trying to say is that he encountered this part that has all this rage, and Dr. Schwartz said, okay, we'll talk to the part. What is he saying? And Aubrey says, oh, well, the part just wants to dissolve. He's totally cool with dissolving. Come again. Dr. Schwartz calls him on it immediately and said, whoa, let's be really clear about this because that's uncommon. And what he's politely saying is, that's bullshit because parts don't do that. Now, the behind the scenes of what's going on there is that you're getting down with a part, right? All of our parts as subpersonalities have these functions that they work and do for us. His philosophy, Dr. Schwartz, which I also follow, is that there are no bad parts, right? Even the parts that are doing things that we, or even society, would consider to be bad are not actually bad. It's just that the parts are confused on what they're doing. For example, our subconscious mind, it doesn't know right from wrong, left from right, truth from untruth. It puts out what goes in. And so a lot of times those parts are subconscious parts. They're operating inside the subconscious. And they don't know what is right, what is wrong, in accordance with society, in accordance with our laws and our rules and our social mores and norms. They're doing the best job that they know how to do in regards to how they developed, meaning this part developed in accordance with this trauma or this thing that occurred in the past because we needed the part, right? So, for example, you can have a bully part inside of you, and bullying is socially unacceptable, considered bad, etc. But the bully actually came out due to the trauma of the individual being bullied and picked on as a kid. And so that part developed as a way to stand up and fight for itself. But over time, with that unhealed wound, it became pathological, and now it's become a bully inside of the psyche of the individual and is causing havoc. That's kind of essentially what they're trying to get at here, is that this part, this kid, a young, an inner child, Aubrey, or inner adolescent, inner teen maybe, is filled with rage. And this part has come forward because that rage was deemed useful for some reason. As it goes on, you would see that, it developed because of this memory with his dad and playing ping pong, and he yelled at him, and the part had to stand up and, be a warrior for Aubrey, and all of that is good, well, and fine. That's true stuff. But here, he knows enough about parts therapy to kind of get into that narrative, but he doesn't know enough about how it works that he makes a slip and a mistake here, because he says, oh, I just want to go down and dissolve. Parts don't want to dissolve. Parts are developed to satisfy a need, a mental and emotional need, something happening. So to say that, a part just wants to dissolve, it's like if you had a kid on a basketball team and he's riding the bench and he's jumping up and down and he's waving his hand, he's, put me in, coach, I've been training, I've been practicing, I've been doing all the things, mom got me some new Nikes, I'm ready, put me in. And the coach was like, okay, just go in, you're in now. And the kid was like, you know what, I just think I'm going to go home, I'm not really feeling it, I'm just going to take my stuff and get out of here. What? Calling out a part, the part would never just say, oh, I'm going to go dissolve, right? And that's the thing about it. Parts don't actually function that way. And that's what Dr. Schwartz is trying to tell him, like, dude, no. He didn't know that. Parts have something to say. They have a job to do. They have a function, they have a purpose and a meaning of being there. And they want to do their job, perform their function, live in accordance with their meaning. They have their own form of what is true for them. They have their own truth, you could say. And so parts, especially when they're called on, they have a voice they want to express and get out. When you get into deep, real parts work, IFS, not just one part, but you can do multiple parts. It gets infinitely more complicated, of course. But even just one part, you can have a dialogue and go back and forth with that part. Really dig in deep and get into the psychology of where did this part come from? Why did it develop? What does it look like? When is it triggered? When is it afraid? What does it need to heal? What's its function? What's driving that part? You don't see any of that here. And that's just the tip of the iceberg on where you can go with this work. You don't see any of that here. And that's how you know it's just posturing. Because see, that's not the only tell in that scene. It is a tell in that he didn't know that. He says something that's not a function of a part, and it's like, oh. It showed definitively that my ego is running this show and writing the script. But there's actually a more insignificant tale that's going on there. The part was apparently full of rage. And the part then was called on to speak. The part, it didn't just say, oh, you know what, I'm going to go back inside. I'm not really that rageful today. I'm going to take a day off. We're cool. According to Aubrey, the part said, I want to dissolve. That's not a possibility for that. But it's interesting that that's what he chose for that. Why would he do that? Well, he would do it because that's the microcosm of this entire charade. And it's a charade that we see within the spiritual community far too much, which is bypassing. You can call it spiritual bypassing, call it whatever you want. But it's staying on the surface level of things while not having the courage or the will or the drive to get down deep, where the pain is, where it hurts, where there's sacrifice and suffering, where you do the real deep, dirty work and you face your demons head on. Instead, we'll just say that those demons dissolved and we're good. Did my work. Doing the work, guys. Now, I'm not saying that he hasn't done other things throughout his life. I'm sure he probably has. I'm not making commentary on that. I'm making commentary on this because he's never actually even come out and stated what the issue is. He hasn't stated that he's responsible. He hasn't taken accountability. He hasn't even stated that there's literally nothing so far. So guess what? What's the wounded ego with the narcissistic traits going to do? Right? We've already played the victim card. So now, we got to bypass. Okay, they didn't buy the victim bit. I'm going to try to blame this part down here. It wasn't me, Aubrey. It was this guy. It's that guy's fault. That part. Bad part. No, I like you. You just gotta take the fall for me, okay? Shh. It's cool. I took care of it. I did the work. He's gone. Yeah. I know, convenient, right? It's an approach to this type of work. It's approach to a problem that becomes a bigger problem, which is that you are spiritually and psychologically bypassing what is needed in order to heal and grow and become whole. If we ever needed proof to try to understand why this man at 44 years old, is behaving in this way, that's it right there. Because when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, just go take some medicine. Go for another bump. I'm not trying to make light of it. It seems like it. But it's a very, very big problem within this community and communities all over the world. This is how we see predators. It's how we see narcissists. It's how we see people come in, take over, take advantage, and hurt other people. We've seen in spiritual communities all throughout history, right? The narcissistic spiritual leader, the parade of spiritual fuckboys at festivals and in the jungles at, house music dance parties offering medicine to girls that should probably be at home in bed. I don't mean to sound like grandpa here, but what is going on with this madness? Because it's being stated and postured as healing, as growing, as becoming. But all it is a cleverly designed facade. That's ultimately why you, the collective, is upset. You're being made witness to a facade of epic proportions that you never asked for, but perhaps needed to see. Because this has been going on for a long time, with him and many others. And it's time that we come together as a group, as a collective, and say no. 2025, it's the year of truth. I don't care where you are or what's going on. Truth is coming out. The light is overcoming. I don't care if you're in the farmhouse, the outhouse, or the White House, or house music. The truth is prevailing. But the time has come that we can no longer allow our leaders to claim to be servants of the light, all the while being too afraid to forge their brokenness in the dark. That's how the dark takes over. There's too much of it in the world right now. Yet we press on. They continue on their journey, the parts work, and they hit some notes, and they keep going, and of course, every chance he gets, Aubrey takes the conversation out into the philosophical wilds of whatever is coming through to him. And in other conversations, perhaps it would be interesting, but here, it's evasion. He's evading the difficulty of where this conversation and where this practice could actually go by keeping it up in the land of word saladry, extra dressing. However, they do get to a discussion later where addiction is brought up. This is interesting because, of course, addiction is one of the things that the collective has been talking about in regards to him. So let's take a look at what he says in terms of addiction.
A fairly significant addiction to chess.com.
Mm-hmm. Chess.com?
Chess.com. I fucking love it. It's like,
I used to play chess. I haven't played in years.
I love it. It's like, but it's like, it's no less addictive than like seeing my little brother when he would play World of Warcraft. It's like, so like that's just an example, and I justify it because chess is healthy. It's good for your mind, whatever. Right. But I'll spend like I tried to put a 30-minute timer on my phone to where it would shut off the app. Every single day I click off that and say ignore for today. I've said ignore for today for like the last 6 months, because like I'm like, and part of that is because I'm not thinking about everything else that I need to think about. I'm just playing chess.
Yeah,
I have
well,
an opponent, and
It's what we call a firefighter part that's trying to distract you from all this stuff we worked with today.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that part, you know, like I love it, and I'll always play chess, and I'll always have time, but you know, like this is now a time for a different level of focus and a different level of intensity, and I think
Chess, he says. Chess. Not any of the things that have been mentioned in the comments, any of the ceremonies and medicine journeys that seemingly endless. But chess. Why even go here? I'm glad you asked. Bringing this up puts him in the direction of, I addressed something that had been brought up in the comments, addiction. I addressed that demon, and I wrestled with my demon where I play on chess.com for too long. While not saying anything, while not approaching the subject of any of the different things that people have said between ayahuasca and ketamine and MDMA, all of these drugs that can be abused when the intention is not medicinal behind them. When your intention is escape and evasion, they cease to be medicine. Then they're substances. I'm not going to go into a whole thing on that here. I'll do a separate video about all of that. But I'm not putting down medicine, plant medicine, etc. They are exquisite and wonderful in the right place. But just like anything, taken to a wrong place, they're very dangerous. And we may be seeing that play out here. But no, just a little checkmate action, nothing to worry about. There actually is a really fascinating part of the discussion here, and it reminded me of a little bit of when Aubrey's podcasts are really great, when they get into some real conversations about, you know, the geekiness of spirituality and psychology, and even psychedelics. Towards the end, it looks as though perhaps the ego has moved out of the way a little bit, and Aubrey is not Aubrey Marcus, rich podcast spiritual leader, psychonaut, blah, blah, blah. He's just geeky spiritual bro Aubrey talking about geeky shit that we like to talk about in our communities. And for a moment there, you do actually get to see the real him. And it's nice. He's not fake crying. He's not performing. He's just like having a geeky discussion for a few minutes. And that actually takes me to the one aspect of this episode that I really liked. And so let's take a look at that right now.
this process is really fucking good. Like, this is really, really, really good.
It is good, yeah. It's good when you take the risk to really go to these places, yeah.
I mean, I've had a lot of mentors, a lot of teachers, but I've never had like a therapist. You know what I mean? And because I just haven't felt a lot of confidence in the therapy, you know, kind of function in general, because I don't feel like they're trained in the right ways. I don't feel like their knowledge is exactly dialed in the right ways. But every time I've been with you, like I trust you, and I like feel how deep this work is. And so, like, to just tell people now, like, I mean, obviously I'm sitting with the fucking master of the of the program here, but I'm sure you have so like leagues of truly intensely skilled people.
It's true,
who can bring people through this process of maternal family systems.
That's right.
And it's fucking powerful.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really, really, really good. Like the effects are not like marginal or gradual. The effects are like profound.
Thank you. It's
And
true.
they feel like they stick.
They do stay. Before we shift out of there, though, so go back to the sky and your parts.
I left that little part in there at the end just because it was a great example of Aubrey trying to get out of the actual protocol and get into podcast conversation land. And Dr. Schwartz is like, no, that's nice. You're right. Now come back right here. Focus. But what he said there, it is important. It's important for this, and it's important for all of us, because right there, he is correct in that this is powerful. This modality is incredible. And I feel like Dr. Schwartz there, he was like, yeah, if you can give yourself, if you have the courage to actually go to these places and do it, it is incredible. Now in the moment, it seems like he's celebrating Aubrey for doing that. But personally, I think he was like, yeah, when you actually do, which we're not, but when you actually do it correctly, it is transformational. And I want to add on to that and say, yes, absolutely. It's one of the greatest modalities that I have been through personally and now use professionally. And so I'm glad that this podcast happened to bring some attention to this specific modality. And if you haven't seen it, the earlier podcast episode that he does with Dr. Schwartz is really something. So I do highly recommend that. However, a truth is unveiled here, and that is the answer to this. Maybe not the full answer, but what I feel like is one of the answers. He starts by saying, I've had a lot of mentors, but I've never had an actual therapist. And therein lies one, not all of the problems, but one of the problems, and a big one. The reason why is because we know that he started doing plant medicine journeys and psychedelics with his dad when he was a late teenager. And so he's been wrapped up in these kind of healing areas and mentors and journeys and ceremonies and shaman, all the things that go into that. And I'm not hating on that. I love those things. I partake in those things. I like them. That's great. But if he's only done that aspect of the work and only been on the spiritual side of things, then this is why there are psychological issues that are at play here. Potentially ego-driven, narcissistic type qualities. We're seeing qualities in the relationship, emotional eccentricities, we'll call it. I'm trying not to use harsh language here because I'm not here to diagnose. This is not a therapy session. Just saying, a lot of people have used a lot of therapeutic buzzwords and talk in relation to this podcast, and they're not wrong. When you have money and a name and a platform, and you go to these shaman, these mentors and whatnot, especially in a loving spiritual community that's very celebratory, very uplifting, you can surround yourself with a lot of yes people that want to be in your sphere, who can benefit from it, who want, maybe to be on the platform. There's all kinds of different things that come to it. But even without that, you still are only engaging with the spiritual side of things, which is absolutely necessary. But so is the psychological. And this is an age-old argument that's unfolding here, right? It's this spiritual versus scientific. And that, even though I don't believe in it, has now trickled down into the psychological versus the spiritual. And we see this in this community and many others, where people on the side of therapy and the psychological, they look at spiritual people and say, oh, that's nonsense and woo-woo garbage and this and that, right? I'm sure you've heard it. But then people in the spiritual community will be just like Aubrey was here and saying, oh yeah, they don't really have the right training and they're coming from the universities and they don't have the shamanic background. And yeah, there's some truth to that. But this isn't a black and white issue. It certainly shouldn't be anymore, especially in this new era. We're seeing every day that science and spirituality are not mutually exclusive. They're actually complementary. Psychology and spirituality are not mutually exclusive. They're complementary. They're meant to be. Yes, we are spirit, but we do have a mind. Psychology. We are spirit, but we do have a body. Somatic therapy. All of these things work together to engage the whole of us in a mind, body, spirit, healing, transformational journey. And so, yes, I admit I'm biased here because this is what I do. But I chose this field because it's the way up through the therapy, the coaching, the shaman, the journeys, everything. It's the way I attacked my issues. I wanted to heal to the utmost level that I could. And as I was doing that, I started studying and taking notes and saying, I want the highest level of bottom to top healing that I can possibly be involved in. And that's why I went into the training that I did. That doesn't make it the best. That doesn't make me right. I'm just saying that because of this background of mine, I do have this bias. I know it and I own it as a bias. But it doesn't make it wrong. And I do believe that he could benefit greatly from finding a practitioner that straddles that line between the psychological and the spiritual. I have so many friends and colleagues that are into this kind of work and other different types of amazing inner work on a conscious and subconscious level. As I know, so many of you out there have different just modalities, ways of thinking and being and healing, all these different practices that you guys are into. It's an amazing community of just unparalleled healing and transformation. And that's my hope and my prayer for this man, is that something comes along safely, and it comes along safe and strong enough to shake the ego consciousness to the core so that that ego consciousness can split open and the soul can come through and be able to look at everything and voice out from the depths of the heart, from where and who he really is, and objectively bring that information to his conscious mind, enable him to actually see what is happening here. Because the ego is powerful and it's subtle, and it will blind a person to everything outside of them that is wrong or that they need. And I fear that's what's happening here. And that's why instead of life-changing therapy, we got C- performance. And on that note, this is running long, so we'll cut it here. I don't enjoy talking about situations and people in this negative way. Really, I just want to go take a shower right now because I've been talking about this and it doesn't feel good. It's the ick. You know, I love lifting people up, celebrating people, but I'm doing this series out of that love for people because I have clients, I have friends, I know people who have been misdirected and misled by this individual and so many other individuals like him. And this is the dawning of a new era, whether we want to admit it or not. And we need to take steps in a healthy, soul-driven, deeply caring way for our future and the future of our children as we move into this new era. And so on that note, I do want to say thank you for being here, of course, for watching this, and for sitting through some of these things that might be difficult to talk about, but I do consider them to be important. And with that, there are going to probably be another 4 or so episodes of this series, because we haven't even gotten to the heart of this series yet, and that starts in the very next episode. The next 2 episodes are going to get to the actual meat of this series. The first, we're going to be going back and getting the story from many years ago up to the point of the podcast episode. And then the next, which will be the 4th episode of the series, we're going to be getting into the actual episode itself and what's going on and not going on in this dynamic. So if you're interested, please like this, subscribe. If you haven't, go check out the other video about that first follow-up, the podcast episode with Caitlin Howe, and leave some comments, what you think about this whole debacle, what you think about the era that we're in and where we're going. And let me know if there's things that you would like me to talk about or touch on. But thank you for being here. Stay tuned, like, subscribe, click that notification, whatever thing, and so it drops in when these episodes release. It's been slower because of the holiday weekend, and we've had some interesting socio-political times as of late. So I've been incredibly busy in my private practice. But this coming week, I'm going to devote a lot of time to this series because honestly, I want to wrap this series up and get on back to healing and psychological and spiritual videos. So, thank you again. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, heal your heart, renew your mind, transform your life. I am Aaron Justice. See you soon.